Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Pathological Lawyer Podcast, episode number 3. This is our third conversation about the Bermuda Triangle of limiting beliefs. Belief number 1, work is important above all else and it has to be hard. Number 2, I'm not good enough. And number 3, I thought was true. I didn't recognize it as a limiting belief. A while back, I went to a seminar, paid some money, listened to someone talk over the course of 2 days. And I don't remember really anything about that seminar except for this one takeaway that made it worth all of the sacrifice of time and money. And that was many professionals, A-type personalities, tell themselves, and were taught, usually at childhood, that there is not enough time. That is one of my most destructive limiting beliefs. And I can see now, looking back over my career, how it has hamstrung me based on that belief that there isn't enough time. Now, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing to believe that there's not enough time in certain respects. It causes us to do more in less time, to strive, to pay attention, to concentrate. And most of us were taught that by parents or coaches or teachers or all of them. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can be limiting. And it shows up in any number of ways. And I find myself often irritated by people who do not show a certain sense of urgency. For 14 years, I took my kids to school. I dropped them off at carpool. And there was this one family that did not appear to have any sense of urgency. Now, from my perspective, if the kids were in the car with their backpacks and their books and everything ready to go, when the car pulled up to the carpool line, they would open the door, get out of the car, and close it. But not this one family. They would take minutes. Sometimes it would be so many minutes that we would all be driving around them. And if I was immediately behind them, I would go around them because I knew they would take forever. But if I was 4 or 5 cars back, it wasn't safe for me to make an additional lane of traffic. So I would sit there and study this. Now, my kids, when we got to school, they were all packed by the time they got in the car. They had their water bottles and everything ready to go. And they had gotten the memo that when you get to the carpool lane and the car stops, you open the door, get out, and close the door. And it's funny because this other family, to this day, I do not know what they were doing in the car waiting at the carpool line. Like they were planning their meals and kissing goodbye, and who knows what they were doing, but it was baffling to me. And I can only imagine if that's the sense of urgency that they showed on something relatively mundane, how did that show up with the rest of their lives? And I can't even imagine what a train wreck they must be. And it's funny because I relayed this story to a group when I was speaking last summer, and one of the people in the audience said, "Do you have any concern that you've screwed up your kids with your twisted thinking about time?" And I was thinking of my kids shooting out of my car like paratroopers. And I thought, possibly. It may be that they're a little bit tight on this world view that there isn't enough time. And so we've had to have conversations about how it can be limiting. Why is it limiting? Well, if we start with the proposition that the brain will filter information that gets to us that is consistent with what we already believe. When we believe that there isn't enough time, that will mean we will do things. We will adopt habits. We will maybe take shortcuts that prove that belief true. So how has that shown up for me over the last 27 years in my career? Well, procrastination. If there's not enough time, then I can't start this project because I won't be able to finish it. And I've given up countless hours, thousands of hours probably, in having that belief that I can't start this project because I can't finish it. Now, of course, if we start the project and then we have to put it off and then start it again, there's a significant amount of overlap that we usually can't build a client for. So I'm not saying that we start a project that takes 2 hours because we have 2 spare minutes. But if we have an hour and we think it's going to take 2 hours, then perhaps there's a way that we can set it up so that we can take advantage of that hour rather than squandering it. And when we look at time as scarce, often we will fill that time with low-value tasks. And the reason we do that is because we're waiting for that uninterrupted block of time to do these more important things that we haven't previously had the time to do. And if you look at A-type personalities, a lot of times we will have calendars that are full, that are not kind to us. We may have back-to-back meetings where there's no time to go to the bathroom or to take a walk or to do anything. And when we have that type of day, oftentimes we will devolve into doing lower value tasks because we don't feel that we have the uninterrupted time block to do the deep tasks, or we may not be in a mode where we can focus appropriately to do that big task. Excuse me. So what happens is these tasks get put off, and they get put off until the pain of being late on those tasks is greater than the pain of pushing everything out of the way and doing it. And what I find is when I plan my day with uninterrupted blocks of time with some latitude, I have the ability to go into those deep work periods, and I try to hold them relatively sacred, not being inflexible, but recognizing that if I'm left to my own devices, I will squander those big blocks of uninterrupted time. And so this idea of there isn't enough time comes home to roost, and it plays itself out in real life in a way that can hinder our career. Another way that I've found it showing up in my career is doing things to 98% completion and moving on to the next task because I have to get that next task done. And then I someday have to go back and sweep up that other 2%. And the problems that I experience in my professional life are not caused usually by major errors in judgment or huge missed deadlines. They're caused by these very, very little things that I should have followed up with long before they became a problem. And when I believe that there's not enough time and I'm rushing from one task to the next, I leave those 2% loose ends hanging out there that often come back to bite me in the rear, and it's completely unnecessary. And as an example, last night, I had put in all of my time into the billing software, but I didn't batch it. And I thought, I will go in the morning and batch it and start with a clean slate. And as soon as I got in, I had already started on another project before I did that. And it's not crucial as to whether I batch my time for yesterday first thing in the morning or not, but it shows a pattern of behavior that I went immediately to something productive, something billable, something that the client wanted me to do, rather than sweeping up those little 2% loose ends that, again, will come back to haunt me if I don't handle them appropriately. So it's not a problem to believe that there isn't enough time to a point. A sense of urgency is what gets us out of bed in the morning sometimes. It helps us with our life purpose, creates great opportunities in our lives with meaningful careers and financial compensation. But taken to the point where it becomes destructive, it really holds us back. And it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And for me, I was absolutely astonished that I realized in that one day that everything that I had been telling myself about how much time I had to do things and that there wasn't enough of it was a fiction, a story that I made up and I had repeated to myself for decades. So if that's you, join the club. It's easy to fix. It's not an overnight fix necessarily, but the awareness that we think that and that we believe that is the start of the solution.